October 26, 1965, 6:47 p.m. A teenage girl whispers 4 words to a police officer that will expose the most depraved crime in Indiana history. Get me out of here. This isn't a story about a monster hiding in the shadows. This is about a monster who invited the entire neighborhood to watch, who charged admission, who convinced children it was justified. And for 3 months, in a middle-class Indianapolis home, nobody stopped what was happening in the basement. Summer, 1965. Sylvia Likens is 16 years old. Brown hair, bright smile, dreams of being a Beatles fan like every other teenage girl in America. She's the middle child in a carnival family. Her parents travel the Midwest, running concession stands at county fairs. Her younger sister, Jenny, is 15, walks with a limp from childhood polio, but the two are inseparable. In early July, their mother, Betty, gets arrested for shoplifting. Their father, Lester, is about to leave for another carnival circuit. He needs someone to watch the girls while he's gone. Enter Gertrude Baniszewski, a 37-year-old woman, divorced, with 7 children crammed into a rundown house at 3850 East New York Street in Indianapolis. Gertrude is a chain smoker with severe asthma, surviving on welfare checks and whatever cash she can scrape together. Lester Likens offers her $20 a week, 10 per girl, to let Sylvia and Jenny board with her family. And Gertrude says yes. On July 3, 1965, Sylvia Likens walks into that house. But then, she will never walk out alive. Before we go further, if you're interested in true crime that examines how entire communities can fail, hit subscribe. We focus on the psychology in the systems behind the headlines. We examine the psychology of evil. And sometimes, understanding evil is harder than just being horrified by it. The first 2 weeks are normal, uneventful even. Sylvia helps with chores, plays with the younger kids, writes letters to her parents. Then, the carnival check arrives late. Gertrude Baniszewski doesn't ask questions. She doesn't call Lester. She takes Sylvia and Jenny into a bedroom, accuses them of lying about the money, and beats them both with a wooden paddle. When the check arrives 3 days later, there's no apology. There's just a new rule in the house. Sylvia Likens deserves to be punished. By early August, something shifts. Jenny stops getting hit. The other Baniszewski children aren't touched. It's only Sylvia now. Shoved downstairs, paddled across the back, and slapped across the face for imagined infractions. Why her? Gertrude will later claim Sylvia spread rumors about her daughters, that she was promiscuous, that she stole. None of it is true. But in that house, truth doesn't matter anymore. Late August. 2 teenage boys start hanging around the Baniszewski house. Coy Hubbard, 15, dating Gertrude's daughter Paula. Richard Hobbs, 14, neighborhood kid, looking for somewhere to belong. Gertrude tells them Sylvia's a liar, a troublemaker, someone who needs to be taught a lesson, and they believe her. Coy practices his judo throws on Sylvia, slams her into walls. Richard joins in, encouraged by Gertrude's approval, by Paula's laughter, by the twisted logic that this girl somehow deserves it. One afternoon, Sylvia's daughter Stephanie asks, "Mom, why are you doing this?" Gertrude's answer, "She's a bad influence." Stephanie stops asking questions. Early October. Sylvia tries to tell someone at school. A teacher notices bruises. Sylvia stammers an excuse about falling because Gertrude promised that if she tells, Jenny will be hurt instead. The school files. show no formal reports was ever made. So, Sylvia stays silent, and the punishment moves to the basement. She gets tied up now, starved for days at a time, beaten with curtain rods until she can't stand, forced to insert a glass Coca-Cola bottle into herself while the neighborhood children watch. Gertrude charges them 5 cents for admission. October 22nd. Gertrude's 12-year-old son, Johnny, waves a bowl of soup in front of Sylvia's face, then snatches it away, laughing. By this time, she's so malnourished and weak, she can barely lift her head. October 23rd. Gertrude heats a sewing needle over a flame. She presses it into Sylvia's abdomen, carving letter by letter, "I'm a prostitute and proud of it." When Gertrude's hand cramps, she passes the needle to 14-year-old Richard Hobbs, and he finishes the job. October 25th, late afternoon. Sylvia overhears Gertrude talking to Paula. They're planning to dump her in the woods, leave her for dead, and blame it on some boys from school. Sylvia knows, if she doesn't leave now, she never will. She drags herself up the basement stairs, every step agony, burns covering her body, infected wounds weeping, ribs fractured, barely able to see through swollen eyes. She can barely stand, her body is failing. But she reaches the door anyway. When her hand touches the knob, Gertrude sees her. What happens next lasts 4 minutes. Gertrude grabs a curtain rod. Coy Hubbard grabs another. They beat Sylvia until she collapses on the floor. Coy throws her down the basement stairs. Gertrude follows, and in front of her own children, stomps on Sylvia's head. When they leave, Sylvia is still breathing, but barely. October 26th, morning. Sylvia can't speak, she can't walk, and she cannot swallow a donut Gertrude mockingly offers her. When she is asked to recite the alphabet, she makes it to the letter D before her voice fails. That afternoon, neighborhood kids gathered in the basement one last time. Sylvia tries to identify them, her voice a whisper, pointing with a trembling hand. Some of them laugh. At 5:30 p.m., Richard Hobbs comes back to the house. He finds Gertrude's daughter Stephanie in the basement, cradling Sylvia. Stephanie is crying. I think she's dying. At 6:30 p.m., Sylvia Marie Likens stops breathing. When Gertrude notices she is dead, she bathes the body, dresses it in clean clothes, and lays it on a mattress. Then she sends Richard Hobbs to a payphone with a script. A girl has been injured. Please send an ambulance. When police arrive, Gertrude hands them a letter, supposedly written by Sylvia, claiming she was attacked by a gang of boys in the woods. The officers look at the emaciated body of Sylvia, the 150-plus wounds all over it, and the word prostitute carved into her stomach. And then they look at Gertrude. One officer turns to Jenny Likens, the younger sister who's been silent this whole time, and asks, "Is this what happened?" Jenny Likens looks at the officer. Then she says the 4 words that break the case wide open. "Get me out of here, and I'll tell you everything." Within 48 hours, Gertrude Baniszewski, her children Paula, Johnny, and Stephanie, plus neighborhood teens Coy Hubbard and Richard Hobbs, are arrested. The trial begins April 18, 1966, and lasts 17 days. The courtroom hears testimony so disturbing that grown men cry. Jurors ask for breaks. The judge threatens to clear the gallery multiple times. Jenny Likens, barely 16 years old, takes the stand and describes every single thing that happened to her sister. Gertrude's defense? "I didn't do most of it. The kids did." Paula's defense? I was pregnant and emotional. The boy's defense, we thought she deserved it. May 19, 1966, after 8 hours of deliberation. Gertrude Baniszewski, guilty of first-degree murder, life in prison. Paula Baniszewski, guilty of second-degree murder, life in prison. Johnny Baniszewski, Coy Hubbard, Richard Hobbs, guilty of manslaughter, 2 to 21 years. But here's the twist that will break you. In 1971, Gertrude's conviction is overturned on a technicality. At the retrial, she's convicted again, but by then, public outrage has faded. In 1985, Gertrude Baniszewski is paroled. 40,000 people sign a petition to keep her in prison. The parole board ignores it. She changes her name to Nadine Van Fossen, moves to Iowa, lives as a free woman for 5 years before dying of lung cancer in 1990. Paula Baniszewski, paroled in 1972, served less than 6 years. Coy Hubbard and Richard Hobbs, released in 1968, 18 months for torturing a girl to death. Johnny Baniszewski, released in 1968, never spoke publicly about what he did. Only one of Sylvia's torturers expressed genuine remorse, Richard Hobbs, who said before his death from cancer in 1972, "I let the devil use me." If cases like this matter to you, consider subscribing. We focus on how systems fail and how they can change. And check the description for sources. Everything you just heard is documented. Here's what haunts me about this case. It wasn't one sadistic killer. It was a mother, her children, the boy next door, the girl down the street, kids as young as 10 years old who thought torturing Sylvia Likens was entertainment. For 3 months, in a normal neighborhood, on a normal street, in middle-class Indianapolis, more than a dozen people participated in or witnessed the torture of a 16-year-old girl. And not one of them called the police. Sylvia tried to escape once. She almost made it. If she'd been faster, if the door had been unlocked, if someone, anyone, had helped her. But nobody did. After Sylvia's death, Indiana passed a mandatory reporter law. Everyone, teachers, doctors, neighbors, is now required to report suspected child abuse. It's called Sylvia's Law. Because sometimes, the only way we honor the dead is by making sure it never happens again. In 2001, a memorial was placed in Willard Park in Indianapolis. It's a small stone bench with a plaque that reads, Sylvia Marie Likens, 1949 to 1965, in memory of a young life taken too soon. Jenny Likens visited that bench often before she died in 2004 of a heart attack at age 54. She spent the rest of her life haunted by the question, why didn't I do more? But Jenny was 15, disabled, terrified, and she did do something. She told the truth. Some people believe Gertrude Baniszewski was mentally ill, that poverty and desperation drove her to madness. Others believe she was simply evil. Decide for yourself. But remember this, evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like the neighbor who smiles when you walk by. And sometimes the most terrifying thing isn't the crime itself. It's how easily ordinary people can be convinced to ignore it.